What's up, everyone? Welcome to the premiere episode of C&D Sports, where we give you daily updates, the boldest takes, and the best debates in all of sports. I'm Caleb Moody. That's Daniel Singh.
Yes, sir.
And yeah, super excited to get this show out. To you guys here. This is something that we've thought about doing for a few years now, right?
Yeah, in the past few months, the doors have opened. We've found the time to really put into this project and get it going. We're excited, and we hope you all enjoy it. But with that, we'll get right into it. Today, we're going to be talking about the Buffalo Sabres and what's going on there. And then we have two brackets for you, the NHL playoffs and NBA playoffs. We have some news, updates, and bold predictions for you.
So let's get started with the updates before we move into the feature pieces here. So the New York Rangers continued their firing spree. Last week it was the front office. This week it was behind the bench, as David Quinn and multiple assistants were fired this week. It's a messy situation right now in New York. Lots to talk about. We'll talk about that more when more updates come through and some changes are made. Let's move out to the golf course now. I know you're a big golf fan, Dan.
Favorite sport.
The PGA Championship starts on Thursday. As probably the resident golf expert here, I'd say watch Jordan Spieth. He's hot right now at the Byron Nelson. So we'll get you more updates on that next week as the tournament is ongoing. But yeah, watch for that on Thursday. The EFL Championship League playoffs, they start on Monday. Bournemouth starts their home and home against third place Brentford. And Swansea starts their home and home against Barnsley. And then the winners of those two will take the field at Wembley later on next week to see who's going to join league winners Norwich and league runner-up Watford to get promoted to the Premier League this year. And speaking of the Premier League right now, we learned last week the three teams that will be relegated and heading down to the Championship League, replacing those teams moving up. It's going to be Fulham, West Brom, and the league's last place, Sheffield United. At the top of the table, Man City continues their championship push as they sit top of the table behind their inner city rivals, Manchester United at 2. Leicester and Chelsea are 3rd and 4th respectively, and Liverpool with a big win at Old Trafford against United this week. They hop back into 5th. So they've got a Europa League spot now guaranteed if they can stay at 5th, but looking to get back into that top 4 and back into Champions League standings. Speaking of standings, we are going to move to the Diamond right now. In the MLB, there's a couple surprises on top right now. One of them being the Boston Red Sox are leading the American League East right now. The Boston Red Sox have the best record in baseball as we film today. And then moving on to the Central, the Chicago White Sox. They lead a very competitive AL Central right now. In the AL West, it's going to be the Oakland Athletics. The Oakland Athletics, they are off to a wicked start this year, 20-plus wins already. They lead the West. Moving to the National League, top of the NL West, or the NL East right now, sorry. In a tight division, that's the New York Mets right now. They're off to just a wicked pace right now. Jacob deGrom is very good at baseball.
Oh, yes, sir.
Moving to the Central, St. Louis reclaimed top spot over the Milwaukee Brewers. And then the biggest surprise on top right now, the San Francisco Giants lead the National League West in a division with the presumed top 2 World Series predictions this year with San Diego and the reigning champion Los Angeles Dodgers. The Giants find themselves on top as they are just brilliant this year. Great play by Posey, and on the mound, Kevin Gausman has been solid. And now we will move into our last update. Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay continue with their dispute right now. As we all know, Rodgers has said that he's not afraid to retire if he's not traded, or if he will only come back to Green Bay if general manager Brian Gutekunst is fired. It's a messy situation. Definitely something we'll get into as more developments come in. But it's pretty hard to find a team that's in a worse situation right now than Green Bay. But we may have found one with our first feature piece. That's right, the Buffalo Sabres.
Move over, Ottawa. There's a new tire fire in town. First thing, I just kind of want to talk about the lineup they ended the season with. Now, this is due to having to trade away some players that weren't going to return. You had Brandon Montour, Taylor Hall, and Eric Stahl all leave or get dealt. And then you had injuries to Jack Eichel, Kyle Okposo, Cody Eakin, Zembis Jurgensens, Jake McCabe, and then they were down to their 6th string goalie this season. It was quite a series of events in Buffalo. I mean, they were starting their first line was Anders Bjork, Sam Reinhart, and Victor Olofsson. Those are some solid players, but for a first line, that's a little on the weak side. And you
For
just go
Anders,
down.
for Anders Bjork to be on your first line, that's pretty pathetic.
I mean, I didn't want to say that, but I mean, yeah, I can't disagree. You have Jeff Skinner, the $9 million man on the third line. It's just chaotic in Buffalo. And that's not even talking about the fact that 3 of your longest serving members don't seem all that interested. You have Rasmus Ristolainen, who's been on this team longer than anybody.
Ristolainen checked out a long time ago. That man is just going through the motions, collecting his paycheck and just doing whatever he has to do to try to get out of there.
When I look at it, I feel like Ristolainen and Reinhart now should have been dealt last summer, especially with the way things have played out. You look at a lot of these players. Yes, they have some young talent, but you have the names Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart, Rasmus Ristolainen, Linus Ullmark, Victor Olofsson, Jake McCabe, and Colin Miller, who are all in their prime and all core members of this team. It's not like Toronto where there's still young guys that are getting better. And they're already a proven playoff team. These guys are still trying to break through, placing last this year. And everybody I just listed may be dealt, because I don't see why they'd want to be a part of a rebuild, again, entering their prime. They need to be playing meaningful hockey at this point. They want to be playing playoff hockey down the stretch and competing. But that just hasn't been the case.
And playoff hockey is not something that hasn't been talked about with Buffalo.
No.
I mean, I feel that this is a team that has been saying, this is their year. This is their year to finally break out. And I feel like we've been saying this for 6-7 years straight now.
So
I think it's safe to say that this team isn't up and coming. This team is just bad.
So I agree and disagree. I agree with, so when they drafted Jack Eichel, again, going back to the Leafs, when they drafted Austin Matthews, they had this turnaround. The year he was drafted, he was like the final piece. And together, what they were doing before by drafting Marner, Nylander, Riley, and all the veterans they had with Bozak, Kadri's on the younger side, but yeah, JVR. Collectively, they were able to get in the playoffs. Also, the trade for Anderson really helped them out. If we go back to 2015, they already had Ristolainen, who looked like he's going to be a top-tier offensive defenseman. They had Sam Reinhart ready to go for this season. Then they drafted Jack Eichel, and they signed Ryan O'Reilly. Ironically, Ryan O'Reilly was traded in the offseason of 2018 to St. Louis. And that very season, or he requested a trade that very season, he went on to win the Cup, Conn Smythe Selke Trophy. And it looks like Jack Eichel and company, at least their prime players, are looking to do the same. And again, they're just a bad team that can't seem to get out of this rebuild, because after drafting Jack Eichel, they did improve, but they went right back to the basement in the NHL. And yes, that gifted them Dahlin, which again saw some improvement, but again, they're back in the basement of the league. So I don't know what it is, if they need a complete overhaul or what the next steps are. Casey Middlestat has looked like a second line center or a top 6 forward, but we have to remember Jack Eichel's missing.
You want your first line. You look at first line of really any playoff team. There's some flair to it. There's a little bit of flashiness to it. And Anders Bjork just doesn't do it. I'm not Anders Bjork. I'm not saying that he's not an important guy. And I feel like this is just becoming let's harp on Anders Bjork right now. I appreciate what that man does, and he is a great bottom 6 forward, maybe on your second line on some teams. But to have him on your first line next to Sam Reinhart and Victor Olofsson, and I feel like it would be the same thing right now. They're just so short on that left side right now that he'd still be there. Even if Eichel came back, Reinhart would move down to the second line.
They're short on wings. They're short on centers. The only thing they have going for them is they're decent on defense. But the issue is Jake McCabe and really all their defensemen outside of Yoki Haru and maybe Ristolainen have been prone to injuries. And that really takes a toll on you. This season in net, you had Michael Hauser step up. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen step up.
Great story with Michael Hauser, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
That guy grinded.
Kevin Adams, GM of the Buffalo Sabres, has his work cut out for him this summer. We're going to see what he does at the draft table and via trade, because I don't see any free agents wanting to come to Buffalo. Maybe they do. That's tough. That's going to be a tough call. And then the only guy speaking positively about this team is Don Granato, but it's tough to say whether or not he'll return as head coach, as Kevin Adams hasn't made a definitive choice yet.
That's all Don Granato can do at this point. This guy's hoping, to lose that interim tag. And at this point, you just have to try to find something to be positive about with this team, because it's looking bleak, to put it lightly.
You have the big piece, the superstar, the face of the franchise. 24-year-old Jack Eichel, battling injuries, has not played since February 7th. And it's not looking good. It seems like they've frustrated their star. I mean, he's been frustrated. He wants playoff hockey. They're not giving it to him. What's next?
I'm surprised he hasn't voiced his frustrations in the way he did this week before.
Sooner, yes.
It's been 6 years and absolutely nothing has changed. I mean, maybe this year they didn't necessarily get out to the hot start that we're used to seeing them.
Yeah.
You know, before this year, I think it was the past 2 seasons.
Yep.
They started off. They were leading the Atlantic.
Yeah, they were in 2 seasons ago. They were first in the NHL to start off the season, and then they followed that up with like a 10-game losing streak or whatever. But
nothing's changed for him, and that's why it shocks me that he hasn't been this vocal before. And I mean, I'm glad he's saying something now, as opposed to just taking it, because for the sake of this guy's career, something needs to change, whether that's Buffalo or whether that is, you know, a change in teams for him. So something's got to change for this guy's career.
For the sake of Jack Eichel's career, it does look like there needs to be a change. But we do need to remember Buffalo was playing in the deepest division, not necessarily the toughest, but for them to make the playoffs, they had to bank on, in my opinion, Boston, Pittsburgh, and Washington dropping off. And then they still would have had to beat out Philadelphia and the Islanders. And I mean, even the Rangers, who are up and coming, the only team they should have beat out but didn't were the New Jersey Devils. That was a disappointment. Philadelphia had a disappointing season. All that to say is they did have high expectations and they still didn't meet it. So it's tough to.
I think a lot of hockey fans could be reasonable in saying, you know, they weren't going to plan a playoff parade for Buffalo right away. But they were expecting them to be competitive. As you can say what you want. We talked about the Rangers and, you know, the issues they're going through in the updates. You can say what you want about the Rangers, but they were still competitive this season.
They were good. They finished fifth.
Yeah, they finished fifth, and they had a better record than Montreal. Yeah, they had more points than Montreal. So technically speaking, they were, you know, if you take the top 16 teams and you were to put them in the playoffs, they'd be part of that.
Yeah.
So they finished competitively. I think it was disappointing, just with all the issues that went on there. But I think that's the type of season that people expected from Buffalo.
Yep, and it just didn't happen.
Just that they could make that somewhere where they could make a tangible step to get into the playoffs in the near future. Because I think after 7 years of saying this is going to be Buffalo's year, this could be the year they do it, I think at this point expectations have significantly dropped.
Yeah, and by do it, like we're just asking for playoffs here.
I'm just asking them not to finish with 37 points.
Yeah, it's definitely disappointing. But yeah, a young up and coming team. They're not getting any younger. They're the guys they have there for the most part are in. I look at this prospect pool. You have Jack Quinn. You have JJ Peterka. And then what else? There's nothing really there. I will mention they should be drafting between 1 to 3. It's going to be a defensive draft, so letting go of Ristolainen won't hurt them as much. And if they get rid of Colin Miller as well, they should be able to draft a defenseman that can grow into this team. But again, that's rebuild talk, and these prime players don't want rebuild talk. They want results, and they have to be a part of the solution if they're going to stay. They're responsible as well, just as management. But
Sam Reinhart said it best: no one wants to be part of a rebuild.
Oh, 100%.
Because they've been part of a rebuild their entire career, and it's gone nowhere right now.
Yeah, it can definitely be discouraging, and that's why it looks like it's time to trade these guys just to give them a fresh start. And these are players where you can get something back. So I don't think that's anything to be afraid of as a Buffalo fan. I think we should embrace it like Ottawa has. I mean, it was tough.
Ottawa looked promising this year.
Yeah, Ottawa did look good.
They had a terrible start, and then they were playing above 500 after 2 months of the season.
The Senators, they went from conference finals to last. Then they had to get rid of Hoffman, Carlson, Stone, Duchesne, and Turris, who were both ironically in Nashville on terrible contracts. Good move, Pierre Dorian. Ryan Dzingel, who ended up back there, Craig Anderson. These are all great players they had to get rid of, but look at them now. They're a team on the rise now. A complete overhaul doesn't always guarantee playoffs, because that's what Buffalo's done before. They tanked for McDavid, they lucked into Eichel, and they've done nothing with it. So it's tough to say whether a rebuild's required. I think it needs to be a complete overhaul, a change in mentality. Whether you can do that with the players you have or with new players, it's usually easier with new players, but it's not impossible with the players you've had before. But there definitely needs to be big actions and steps taken for this team to be competitive again. And the fans deserve it. They've been given nothing for the past 51 years, except a Stanley Cup appearance against Dallas, which people argue they should have won, but that didn't happen.
and with how positive Kevin Adams and Don Granato are looking at it right now, you can't have that negativity that Ristolainen is bringing into the locker room, or that Reinhart is bringing into the locker room, and I think Jack Eichel is a Class A personality. Like, he's a class act guy. I think he knows how to be professional. He knows he's the captain of this team right now, until a change is made, and that's whether a change is going to be made. So I think he'll always, for the sake of the role that he has and the team that he's on, he's always going to be that professional guy. But I don't think you can ask the same out of Reinhart and Ristolainen, just with the way that they've reacted to recent news, and especially last offseason. I thought it was a done deal that Ristolainen was going. This has been something that's been going on for over a year now. So I think if we can say that there is any moves that need to be made and the changes that need to be made, first of all, Ristolainen needs to go, because they can still get something back for him. It's not like you're just shedding him and you're not getting anything back. You can get something back for Ristolainen, and Reinhart needs to go. You need to change the mentality in that locker room, and that's how a complete overhaul starts.
Yep.
And then once those two are gone, you can think about what's going on with Jack Eichel.
Yeah, really, Eichel, you'll never be able to replace him. So don't trade him until he demands it, because you'll never be able to replace that after. I mean, maybe you can draft someone and hope that some of these guys coming up are better. But again, you don't even guarantee that you'll get those top picks.
And this is and especially this year, this is a tough draft to bank on, because a lot of them didn't play unless they were playing in Europe or for the U.S. National Development Program. They didn't see, or the WHL played a little bit, but OHL and guys in the queue, they didn't have anything this year. They didn't have any competitive play. So and that's why you're seeing a lot of teams were trading first round picks. And so this already puts Buffalo behind the 8 ball. If they finish with, presumably they should be getting the number 1 overall pick.
It's going to be between 1 to 3.
Yeah, it's like whether they get it in the lottery, that's we can't predict that, but they should be getting a good pick this year, a top 3 pick that could very well be on this roster next year. But it's the year that no one wants it, because no one knows what they're going to get. Guys are going to be fatigued. Guys haven't had that competitive fire this year because of COVID. So one thing that the Buffalo Sabres can take solace in is that Jeff Skinner will still be there next year, because you can't trade $9 million. They have, and don't worry, you have the cap to keep him and Kyle Okposo. So that's definitely not something to be proud of. But
no disrespect, I love those guys. It's just the contracts. But I think with that, it's kind of sad. Let's hype this up with some playoffs. We'll start with the NHL. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stay on the ice.
This is what I've been waiting for. I love playoff predictions.
So starting in the West, you have the 1 seed Colorado Avalanche versus the 4 seed St. Louis Blues. And for me, not only is it an easy pick, but with St. Louis, they are missing Pietrangelo, and I don't think they have that Stanley Cup magic anymore. I think it's going to be a 4-0 sweep, not because St. Louis is bad, but I think Colorado's just that good.
A 4-0 sweep. I gave St. Louis a couple games. I have Colorado in 6. Maybe a little too generous to St. Louis. But the way I've seen Craig Berube conduct himself, I think he can coach a couple wins out of this team against Colorado.
Okay.
But I think Colorado. Definitely not going 7. So maybe a little generous with 6, but Colorado.
No, St. Louis is a very good deep team. We can't forget they did win the cup 2 years ago, but I just think Colorado's that good. But let's move on to the next pick. We have Vegas, the 2nd seed, versus the surprise 3rd seed Minnesota, beating out Arizona and all the California teams. I guess St. Louis was the one that beat those guys out. Minnesota was safely in the playoffs. How they did it, young, hardy, hardworking team.
And let's be clear, it's not necessarily a surprise that Minnesota made the playoffs, because that 4 seed was kind of wide open between
it was
Arizona, but Minnesota finishing just 7 points shy of Vegas and Colorado.
Yep.
And they finished with 35 wins this year. I didn't
in 56 games. In 56 games.
Yeah. They are an impressive team on both ends of the ice. Maybe a little more offensively.
Yep.
But yeah, definitely not a surprise they made the playoffs. Definitely.
Or you know what? With Minnesota, they're going to be solid on the back end. But what surprised us all was how good they were offensively.
And I think offensively, I think if you compare their performance offensively to their performance defensively, I'd say offensively they were up there in terms of goals for this year. They were up there with Vegas and Colorado. So Well, they were up there with Vegas at least. Just
I
10
mean,
goals
hey,
apart.
hey, hey, they beat out St. Louis for both goals for and goals against. St. Louis is supposed to be a good, deep, solid, all-around defensive team, and Minnesota just outdid them. So there you go.
Minnesota's hitting their stride, and I'm glad they're hitting their stride. That team, hardworking team. I like the way that team's built, and they deserve it.
Yeah,
They played well this
100%.
year. But with
But
that being said,
I think it's a 4-1 dub for Vegas. Vegas is just, they got that playoff experience. They still have a bit of magic. Again,
you
another
are
good deep
really
team.
into the sweeps today.
No, it's 4-1, not a sweep.
Oh, 4-1. I thought you said 4 and done. Sorry.
No, 4-1, 4-1.
Well, I gave Minnesota the same amount of games as St. Louis. I have Vegas in 6.
Okay.
I think Minnesota can grind with Vegas. Vegas plays a very defensive game. Whether that's even forwards, defensively, they are a two-way team. I think that's something the NHL doesn't see all that often.
No,
To
and
have
you
a team
have
that grinds like
two
that.
top-tier defensemen in Shea Theodore and Alex Pietrangelo. You have
Shea
two
Theodore
top-tier
really
goalies. Yeah, he has. You have two top-tier goalies, and then you have a deep forward core
It's almost
with
funny.
young guys.
It's almost funny when you think about it, because if Fleury's not performing, they're gonna be like, okay, well, we have another, a recent Vezina finalist, and
Yeah,
Robin Leonard
Yeah.
can just step in and do the same thing.
yeah, you have.
And let's not forget, a lot of people hype up some of the teams in the North Division or the Central or the East. Vegas finished with the second best record in hockey this year. Same point total as Colorado. Colorado just had the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
So they finished with the same amount of points as the President's Trophy winners. This team is a legitimate team. This team is a legit cup contender, and people need to remember that.
Put some respect on Vegas's name. I won't right here because I think Colorado is going to handle them 4-2 series. Again, it's not because Vegas is bad by any means. I think they could do some damage, but I think Colorado's just that good.
And here's where the discrepancies begin. Vegas in 7 over Colorado. I have Vegas in 7 games. Again, I'm going to go back to what I said before. Not too many teams play the way Vegas does, that gritty two-way hockey.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to play well for them against a Colorado team who is very offensive-minded. Even Cale Makar on defense, their top defenseman, is very offensive-minded. I think it goes 7 games just because Colorado is so talented. You've got Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, Gabriel Landeskog, even guys like Burakovsky can score. Like, they've got guys that can score, but I don't think that they can keep up with just the physicality that Vegas is going to play with. So I see Vegas coming out of the West Division. Also, I have playing in my favor the fact that the President's Trophy curse with Colorado very well could still be alive, and I'm predicting that it will still be alive. That they are not
those are all fair and respectable points. I just want to say Colorado is a lot deeper than we've known them to be. In the past, they're just a top-heavy team, especially on the forward core, but they've got Brandon Saad, they've got Burakovsky, Kadri, Comfer, Jost, to name a few. They have so much depth, and defensively, I think they match up with the depths of Carolina, and they may arguably be better on the top end with Cale Makar, Sam Girard, guys like that. Offensively, I think Colorado's going to be a tough out, but that's just my opinion. That's why they play the game, so we can see what actually is going to happen.
So now, moving over to the Central here, we've got the top-seeded Carolina Hurricanes. They'll be playing 4th-seeded Nashville. I don't think there's a whole lot to discuss, at least for this round here. I've got a Carolina clean sweep here.
So originally, I had a clean sweep for Carolina, but I believe Nashville has a bit of magic, and there may be a little bit of bias because I have family down there. And I don't know. There's something about Nashville. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to beat Carolina. Carolina's got this.
Okay. I was getting a little worried there.
Carolina's got this in 6 games, but I don't think it's as big of a mismatch as it appears. Because Nashville has a good team. They just have a lot of underperforming players, and that's the case. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, Carolina just does everything well. So
yep.
So now let's move to the 2-3 matchup there. We got Florida at 2, Tampa Bay at 3, the reigning Stanley Cup champions. This was probably the hardest series that I had to predict. But I'm sticking with the reigning Cup champions here. Even though they didn't necessarily finish out the season how I thought they were going to. I thought they really had a shot to win that division. But I've got them winning in 7 games against Florida. I think Florida is a team that should not be slept on just because of their past. This is a legit team that does, again, just like Carolina, does everything well on both sides of the ice. They're coming into the playoffs hot too, winning 6 straight. But I'm just going to go with John Cooper and the boys in terms of their Stanley Cup poise.
That's a very respectable pick for sure. Tampa Bay, again, reigning Cup champs, but Florida destroyed them in their last 2 games, and we have to remember that. we have to put some respect on Florida's name, which I won't do because I think Tampa's going to handle them 4-1. You have Nikita Kucherov coming back.
Okay.
I mean, the only upside not the only upside, but Victor Hedman is playing injured, and that's going to take a toll on the back end of Tampa Bay, but they still have Ryan McDonough and Mikhail Sergachev. Vasilevsky wasn't looking too hot in those last few games, but again, Tampa's a good team, and they have a top-tier winger, one of the best, in Nikita Kucherov returning. Now, he'll have to get adjusted, and the way Florida beats them out is by getting them quickly. Like, they have to get him off the top. You can't give them games played. So if it goes to 7, it's Tampa, because if Kucherov gets in his groove, it's over. But the faster Florida can take him out, the better. If not, it's Tampa.
Let's remember, Kucherov isn't the only top-tier forward returning. They should be getting Steven Stamkos back at some point this playoffs. I'm thinking it'll be back. I'm thinking it'll be sometime during that Florida series because it will be a tight series.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I bring up Kucherov is he hasn't played for the entire season, whereas
Right.
Stamkos has had a lot of quality games this year.
So we both have Tampa. We stick with that.
Tampa, Carolina. Yeah.
Tampa, Carolina. So Tampa, Carolina, very tight series. Again, another hard one to pick. It's always tough to pick against the reigning Stanley Cup champions, but I did. Carolina in 7 games. I think without Kucherov and Stamkos, I think Carolina could probably do it in 6. But
without Kucherov and Stamkos, Florida is probably going to win that series.
That's a fair point.
And Hedman.
Yeah. But all those guys back, I think they beat Florida, but I don't think that they can overcome Carolina here. I think Carolina you could argue they're the most complete team in the league right now.
I'd agree.
So I think Carolina in 7. I see Carolina coming out of the Central. What do you think?
I agree. I think no matter what, Carolina's got this 4-2. They have the defensive depth. Hedman's going to be playing hurt the entire playoffs, no matter how you slice and dice it. He's due for surgery. And that's going to hurt you when your Conn Smythe winner and arguably one of your most important player, I think Vasilevsky is, but Hedman's up there. When you have a guy like that out, it's going to be very tough for Tampa Bay to overcome that. But yeah, it's going to be up to what Stamkos, Kucherov, Point, and Vasilevsky can do for this team. And they have a lot of depth and guys that can step up. Cirelli wasn't playing to his potential.
Yeah.
So in any of these series, again, this is why they play the games. Tampa Bay could overcome this, but I think Carolina is the beast in the Central that these teams will have to slay, but I don't think they can.
So with that, moving on to the East, we'll start with the 1-4 matchup. Pittsburgh at the 1, the Islanders at the 4. And this is the matchup of the truly of offense versus defense here.
Yes,
the second best offensive team in the league in Pittsburgh against the second best defensive team in the league in New York. This was a close one. That whole division was close from 1-4, only separated by 6 points. But I'm going to stick with Pittsburgh there. I think their offense is moving like a well-oiled machine at this point right now. Crosby's a hard candidate this year, playing some of the best hockey that we've seen him play, at least in recent history. They look good. They look similar to those back-to-back cup winning teams. They look complete. I've got them in 6 games over the Islanders. Who do you have?
So I'd have to disagree there only because Pittsburgh's a top-heavy team, and I think depth's what gets you through the playoffs. I have the Islanders 4-3. What's tough for me to pick, or where it's tough for me to pick Pittsburgh is the Islanders have handled them in the past. And on paper, at least, I mean, Pittsburgh, I'm not going to say they overachieved, but they went beyond their expectations. And in the past, the Islanders have handled stronger teams in the playoffs than Pittsburgh.
That is fair.
And they're a deep team again. With that said, they did lose Devon Taves, which was a big loss for them. But again, I think their depth, their coaching, their system, everything they have is intact, and it's going to help them.
One reason that I'm not picking the Islanders is, again, it's close. They're only separated by 6 points. Pittsburgh's not far and away better than the Islanders. I'm worried that when playoffs comes, and it's happened in the past, sometimes it's worked for him, sometimes it hasn't, Barry Trotz is going to overcoach.
Okay.
And I'm worried he's not going to let things flow like they have in the regular season. And I'm worried that he is going to overcoach. For any baseball fans, similar to what Kevin Cash did in the World Series, Game 7. I'm worried that he's going to nitpick too much. Overcoach in Pittsburgh's just going to exploit the flaws of that because they are a sound offensive machine right now.
The one thing with Pittsburgh and the Islanders, I will say, is I feel Varlamov's a much better proven goalie than either goalies in Pittsburgh. If it's Tristan Jarry or Casey DeSmith starting, but I think Varlamov's just gonna outdo whoever they have in net.
but experience doesn't always get you there. Just ask Jordan Binnington, Antti Niemi, Matt Murray, even in Pittsburgh. So you can even just look there. Experience doesn't always get you the cup wins, because if it did, Henrik Lundqvist would probably have a cup.
Yep. Nope. That's a fair point.
So let's move on then to the 2-3 matchup. Washington at the 2, playing the surging Boston Bruins at 3. Boston has been just brilliant since the acquisition of Taylor Hall. He's really found his groove. Offensively, they're there. Defensively, they look a lot more sound too after the trade deadline with Mike Riley, but that also is countered with Washington. You can never count out Ovi, Backstrom, Oshie. Anthony Mantha has looked good despite the qualms that I may have with that trade. We won't get into that, but he has looked good. He has looked good since coming over there. They are a great offensive team. I think they struggle defensively. I think they're a little slow defensively. So let me stop rambling here and just get to my pick. I have Boston pulling off the upset here. I have Boston in 6 games too. I think that Boston is really coming into their own offensively. I think Taylor Hall is in for a big playoffs, something that he has not been able to do. The only time he's ever made the playoffs was with New Jersey.
And that wasn't, I don't want to say it wasn't a real playoff experience, but they were very much outmatched.
Yeah. And I think this is, I think this is a good matchup for Boston. I think they exploit Washington's defensive shortcomings. And Tuukka Rask, it's not even mentioning Tuukka Rask. Tuukka Rask has been fantastic this past month.
I would argue that Washington's far better defensively than Boston is. I mean, they're much deeper on the back end. But I actually just changed my pick. I originally had Washington in 7. What came to mind was the issue with Evgeny Kuznetsov. It seems like he's looking like Dennis Rodman, not really locked in, not really focused. There's a lot of things throughout the season that's taken his mind off the game. And I think that's going to hurt them, because when Washington won that Stanley Cup in 2018, he was arguably their best forward. In my opinion, he got snubbed at the Conn Smythe. It should have been between him and Carlson. So with him down, I think that gives way for Boston to come through. And yeah, Boston's defense core may not have those name brand players, but they've been playing a more sound and consistent game that's going to get you through playoff hockey, whereas Washington hasn't. The goaltending matchup, I'm taking Tuukka Rask any day. Even if they have to go to Halak, even if they have to go to Swayman. No disrespect to Vanacek. I think those are all options because of the system Boston has implemented. So I'm going to say Boston is definitely getting that win. I think in 6 or 7 games, just because I'm on the spot here, I'll say 7.
There you go. There you go. We've got some film day switch ups here.
Oh yes, sir.
Film day pick switch ups. Gotta love it. So now I have Pittsburgh, Boston.
Yes.
And this is our first discrepancy in terms of who we have going to the division finals.
We almost had 2 different picks there.
We almost had 2 different picks, but after the switch up, you have New York, Boston. Yeah. I have Pittsburgh, Boston. I have Boston beating Pittsburgh.
Yes.
I think they're just in a roll right now. I have Boston winning the East Division, beating Pittsburgh in 6 games. And I think we've kind of broken down each team enough here. So I don't really have a whole lot to add here. I just think Boston's defense, especially after Pittsburgh playing the Islanders and playing their tough defense, I think it's going to be, it's not going to be an easy 6-game win for Pittsburgh to beat the Islanders. But I think it's going to exhaust them a bit. I think Boston is just a well-sound machine. I see them moving on in 6 games. Who do you have?
Yeah, so I'll agree first off with you. If Pittsburgh gets out of the series with the Islanders are going to tire them out. They're going to make it easier for Boston to overtake them. So if that's how things play out, I would say Boston over Pittsburgh. But I have the Islanders and Boston for my bracket, and the Islanders are just the deeper team at the end of the day. On the back end, at least forward cores, we could argue. I feel like the goaltending position for the Islanders is more stable with Varlamov, whereas you're not 100% sure what you're going to get from any of Boston's goalies in comparison to Varlamov.
Right.
In comparison to Varlamov. But again, they're all great goalies, but Varlamov is a beast. He's, I think, underrated.
Varlamov's had that consistency throughout the year. But I would side.
And since coming to the Islanders, I mean, even before, Varlamov just looked good. The Islanders make their goalies look good.
He's a good goalie. I can't argue with that.
Yeah, and because of that, because of what they have up front, like remember, they're playing Barry Trotz's system and still able to play a half-decent offensive game in New York. I have them winning 4-2.
So you have the New York Islanders coming out of the East.
Yes,
I
and you
have the Boston
Boston.
Bruins coming out of the East.
Okay, now we're going to move on to the North. We have the 1 seed Toronto Maple Leafs playing what looks like the outmatched 4 seed Montreal Canadiens. I have to start this off by saying the goaltending for both teams looks to be in question. We're not sure. Yes, we're not sure whether it's going to be Jack Campbell or Freddie Anderson. It looks like it's going to be Campbell, but Anderson may steal that job back. Who knows? But then Price, Allen, we're not 100% sure what's going on in Montreal. What I will say is, no matter what, Montreal's a team that can outplay Toronto with their work ethic, and I think that's going to get them to steal some games, but I don't think that'll be enough to steal the series. I have Toronto winning 4-2.
I agree with you. It'll be interesting to see who both teams put in net. Well, I mean, in Montreal, it's just a case of if Price is healthy, Price is going in net. But Toronto, it's different because Freddie's been their guy the past few years. But Jack Campbell is, you can draw comparisons to what Jordan Binnington did in 2019 when the Blues won the Cup. So it'll be interesting to see who Sheldon Keefe and company go with in that there. And again, Montreal can outplay them or can outplay anyone really, but I'm not going to say that they're going to outplay Toronto here. I do think that they steal a game. You had them in 6. I have Toronto in 5.
Okay. No, it's totally fair.
I think Montreal is good enough, and I think the Leafs do have. They just show some shortcomings in the playoffs. As much as this should.
I have to say, I wouldn't be surprised if Montreal takes this series, but my heart's telling me to go Toronto. We're in Toronto, kinda. We got to support the fans here.
I would be surprised, but that's not a knock against Montreal. That's just the Leafs look the most complete that they have that I've seen, that I've ever seen. So I think Montreal is good enough to steal a game from Toronto. I think Toronto is not as sound as some people may make them out to be, but I think that they can win this in 5 games.
Okay, fair. Let's go ahead and move on to the Edmonton Winnipeg matchup. We have Edmonton 2, Winnipeg 3. For me, this is an easy choice because it's going to be a first round matchup. Edmonton's going to be somewhat fresh. I think Edmonton's taking this in 5. They have nobody that can stop McDavid, nobody that can stop Draisaitl, and Edmonton's forward depth. I mean, not mentioning those 2 names, those guys, if they step up, they're going to be a force throughout these playoffs. Whereas in Winnipeg, again, they have a lot of guys that can step up there, but they haven't, and I don't think they have that magic that can take Edmonton out this year.
I agree. First of all, I am very excited to watch this series. I like watching both of these teams. I think these teams are, high flying offensive superpowers, especially in the North Division. I always love watching McDavid play, and McDavid in the playoffs is just entertaining. I agree that there are guys that could steal the show on either side, but I'm going to side with McDavid and company with Edmonton, and I'm going to have that in 5 games.
Nice. Same pick.
So.
Oh, this leads perfectly into our next one. We both have Toronto and Edmonton playing, and I want you to kick this one off. Who do you have winning that series?
So, Toronto and Edmonton. Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid.
It's the matchup we all want.
This is the matchup that all Canadian hockey fans want to see. The 2 best teams in the North Division, the 2 best teams in Canada.
Yes.
This is
2 of the best players in Canada.
2 of the best players in Canada.
This is the Canadian dream.
This is tough, and I really like McDavid. Okay. But I can't pick them against the Leafs, and the reasoning is, I'm worried.
Oh, I thought you were saying they're going to get swept. Okay, no, I understand this pick. Go ahead.
I'm worried that Edmonton, their defensive shortcomings are going to be exposed. I'm not saying the Leafs don't have defensive shortcomings, but I think the Leafs have more sound number 1 defenseman, and this is not a knock against Darnell Nurse. He's had a great season.
Or is it Tyson Barrie?
Or is it that? I think with Toronto, I think defensively, no one can. Let's be clear. Nobody can contain McDavid and Draisaitl. Those 2 are just a different animal. But I think beyond that, I think Toronto can handle them. I have Toronto in 6. I have Toronto coming out of the North Division in 6. I think this is Toronto's. You're probably going to like hearing this, Leaf fans. I think this is Toronto's best shot to win the Cup. I'm not saying they're winning the Cup. We will get to our Stanley Cup predictions eventually. I'm not saying it. This is the best shot the Leafs have had to win the Cup in recent years. And I see them going to compete in that semifinals coming out of the North Division, beating the Oilers in 6 games. Who do you have?
Originally, I had Toronto over Edmonton, no question. They're, in my opinion, a more talented team outside of Draisaitl and McDavid. I think they're a deeper team. I think they have the better defense, and goaltending would be in question here because you're not sure if it's going to be a warmed up Frederik Andersen or a hot Jake Allen. It's tough to say. So that made it easy for me to originally pick Toronto. But what I can't get over is, again, the goalie debate. And I think Edmonton has more heart. Whenever I watch a Toronto game, it just it doesn't seem like it's always there consistently. So because of that, I think Draisaitl and McDavid will still have some juice in the second round, and especially if their depth steps up, I can see Edmonton taking this in 7 games.
Wow.
And that is my hot take. I know that won't be a popular choice. I mean, Edmonton fans, you're with me. Toronto fans, not so much. And a lot of hockey fans are probably going to disagree. I understand that. But I think Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl are that good. And I think they have room for improvement that is attainable these playoffs.
We promised you the boldest takes, and boy, have we delivered so far. And we have not even mentioned the NBA.
No, sir.
You have Edmonton in 7. So you have Edmonton coming out of the North.
7.
I have Toronto coming out of the North.
Yes.
So once again, a discrepancy.
I have Colorado. Caleb has Vegas. I have the Islanders. Caleb has Boston. And Caleb, with the logical pick, took Toronto over Edmonton. But I got to stick with my boy McDavid. So I'll start with my 1 versus 4, which is Colorado and the Islanders. And for me, that's easy. I think it's going to be Colorado 4-1. The Islanders are a deep team, but Colorado's arguably deeper. But there's no question. I think Colorado's the more talented team.
My 1 versus 4 matchup, completely different. Vegas, Boston.
Wow.
Two similar playing styles. They have offensive weapons, but they're very good two-way teams.
Yep.
They match up very well. I just think Vegas does it better.
100%.
I think Vegas does it better. I think that, having Mark Stone, having William Karlsson, I think that is going to outmatch the Bergeron two-way play. I like Vegas defensively, as we mentioned before. They have 2 world-class defensemen in Pietrangelo and Shea Theodore, and the goaltending. That's the thing, because Tuukka Rask is one of the hottest goalies in hockey right now. However, he did not have that consistency to the season, and Vegas has that nice fallback option in Robin Lehner.
Imagine if they platooned them.
They could very well.
They could. They're both Stanley Cup level goalies.
Exactly. So I have Vegas going to the Cup Finals in that 1-4 matchup. We'll move to the 2-3 matchup now, and you can kick that one off.
Sure. So I have Carolina and Edmonton, and for me, I think this is where the magic ends with McDavid, only because of depth. I think Carolina's depth will outmatch them and keep them nice and energized. So with that said, I think Edmonton's going to take 3 games, arguably steal 3 games because Carolina's that good.
Yeah.
We can't forget they're top heavy as well as deep. They have Dougie Hamilton. They have Jacob Slavin. They have Aho, Teravainen, Svechnikov, and Mrazek's a fantastic goalie. But I still have Carolina taking this in 7 games.
Yep. I completely agree with that. So I had Vegas in 7, and who will Vegas be meeting out of my 2-3 matchup, which is Carolina-Toronto? It's a tough matchup. Both are great offensively, but I'm sorry, Toronto fans. I'm going with Carolina in 6 games this time around. Carolina offers more consistency in terms of their goaltending options. I think Mrazek is very consistent as opposed to, we don't know who's going in net. Is it going to be Campbell? Is it going to be Anderson? Offensively, Matthews is the best offensive player in this series.
Marner, you can't forget about that guy too.
They offer a lot offensively. I like Carolina's offensive efficiency a bit more with Aho, Svechnikov, and Teravainen. And then the defense. Nobody has deeper defense than Carolina.
Talk about this defense core. All right, so you start off, you have Dougie Hamilton, you have Jacob Slavin, you have Brett Pesce, you have Jake Gardner, you have Jake Bean, you have Joaquin, Joachim, Ryan, and Brady Shea. That's 7 defensemen that are all guys who can play anywhere on the lineup. Yeah, one of those guys are sitting out. It's ridiculous what Carolina has. So let's move on to our Stanley Cup Finals picks. Caleb has Vegas and Carolina. I have Colorado and Carolina. For me, I'm going to get it out of the way. I think it'd be a shame if the Colorado Avalanche didn't win the Stanley Cup this year. I understand there's that whole curse and this and that, the pressure that comes with winning a President's Trophy. But I think Colorado can do this in 6. Caleb said Carolina is the best defensive team. I would argue that Colorado is. They have the top tier guys like Cale Makar and Sam Girard. They have depth with Bowen Byram, Eric Johnson, Devin Taves, and Ryan Graves. That's a fantastic top 6, and they still have guys that if there's an injury, they can step in. The goalie matchup, I believe, is soft. Grubauer and Mrazek are both filthy in net. And I would argue Carolina's deeper on the forward group, but Colorado's top end players will be, although Carolina could stop them at points, I think they will be outmatched offensively. And that's my take. Colorado in 6.
So you have Colorado beating Carolina in 6.
Yep.
I don't even have Colorado in the Cup Finals because I have Carolina and I have Vegas at the number 1.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned before that Carolina is the best defensive team in the NHL, led by Slavin and Dougie Hamilton. They will be matching up. They'll be matching up against a very good defensive team, especially on the offensive end. In Vegas, with two-way forwards like Mark Stone, William Karlsson. They also have a world-class top 2 defensively in Theodore and Pietrangelo. I think Carolina is just very complete. I think that offensively they outmatch Vegas. Defensively, I think they slightly outmatch Vegas. Even if Vegas may have the edge goaltending-wise with Fleury and Leonard as compared to Mrazek. No knock against Mrazek. He's having a great season. He's been great since coming back from injury. But I'm going Carolina, and I'm going Carolina in 6 over Vegas. I think Vegas' gritty game with the amount of 7-game series I have them going to. I think Carolina is built better for longevity. I think
100%.
I think having them with a sweep in the first round will definitely help them gain some energy from a few less games than Vegas. I have Carolina beating Vegas in 6 games, and Carolina will be my Cup champion.
That's totally fair. If that's how it plays out, I agreed with all of your picks, like where there were discrepancies. I agree with everything you picked, but yeah, I have to go with Colorado in 6. There you have it. Caleb's got Carolina. I have Colorado.
And that concludes our breakdown. We'll always give you updates as the playoffs progress. We'll give you some altered picks because one of us has got to be wrong. At least 100%. One of us has got to be wrong. So
yeah. We're both gonna be looking foolish by the end of the playoffs. Again, this is why they play the games, folks. Nothing's decided.
Yeah. Now we're sticking with predictions. We've got more predictions, more playoff breakdown, but this time on the hardwood as we move to the NBA playoffs now. We've got our brackets, we've got our matchup breakdowns, and it's a little harder in this case because the NBA playoffs is not set. They go until Sunday night. We film this at 12 p.m. Saturday, so they're still going. When this episode comes out, some new developments will happen. We'll be sure to follow our socials, and we'll be sure to break them down next week once the matchups are set. And
we'll definitely have some updates for you guys.
But we're going based off of, not entirely based off of, I will say, but for the most part, based off of what the standings are now, and then what we perceive the last games might look like.
Yes.
And those will especially become important with the play-in tournaments. So let's start with the Eastern Conference here.
The East. Okay.
So we'll start in the East because the West is a little spicier. There's some hotter takes to be had in the West, just because there's a lot more uncertainty. Because in the East, the playoff teams are set with the top 6, and the play-in teams are all set. It's just in terms of seeding there. So I think our Eastern Conference, both of us have the current matchups as of Saturday. Before games on Saturday. We have everything staying the same. So in that case, let's start with the first round matchup with the number 1 seed. Actually, let's start with the
play-ins. Yeah,
we'll start with the play-in tournament. That'd be a better place to start here. Yep. So the play-in tournament, we think it's going to stay the same here. Boston 7, Charlotte 8, Indiana 9, and Washington 10. So we'll start with that 7-8 matchup. To clinch the 7th seed in the playoffs, it'll be between Boston and Charlotte. It'll be hosted at the TD Gardens in Boston. So I'll start with you. Who do you have in that matchup?
The one thing for me is Jaylen Brown going down with injury. I think that hurts him. And I mean, Charlotte's without Gordon Hayward. So those are 2 big injuries. And I'm going to call this a hot take because on paper, Boston should win this. But I think Charlotte's got this. I don't know why, but there's something about Charlotte, something going on with the way they're playing. I'm going to go with Charlotte.
So you said it's a hot take, but I'm going with it too. It pains me as a Celtics fan, but I also have Charlotte
me too.
Beating them in the play-in. So I think that Charlotte's backcourt matches up better against Boston right now with LaMelo Ball back and healthy. He looks good. Terry Rozier's had a great season. He filled in well when LaMelo Ball went out with his wrist fracture. Devontae Graham is a great third option to have too. I think
Yeah.
their backcourt matches up better against Boston with the inconsistencies of Kemba Walker. And I wouldn't say that Marcus Smart is imploding, because Marcus Smart is one of the best defensive guards in the game right now. But the tempers are flaring with Marcus Smart, and
Yeah.
the issues with focus aren't there. I also think Boston's big men, I think they're a little inconsistent. I think PJ Washington is the best big man in this matchup in Charlotte. Cody Zeller is not someone to count out either.
Yeah.
I
He's
think
very underrated.
I think Tristan Thompson's been disappointing. They need Robert Williams back defensively. He's their best defensive center. Boston's been disappointing. And you mentioned Jaylen Brown. There's just another option that a lot of the offensive weight now has to go on Jason Tatum. And if someone's guarding Jason Tatum, the second option, it's not clear right now in Boston. It should be Kemba, but it's not clear. So I have Kemba's former team knocking them off. You have Kemba's former team knocking them off the first play-in. So that would mean Boston would have to play the winner of Indiana and Washington. So in this case, Indiana would be hosting Washington in Indianapolis. And we'll start with you. Who do you have between Indiana and Washington?
So between Indiana and Washington, I have Washington just because they've been so hot. Westbrook has been carrying this team. He's been looking really good. Beal's taken a little bit of a step back, but I think he has more to offer. I think the harmony that they should have had from the top is finally kicked in, and I think that's going to make them a threat this playoffs. I think they'll handle Indiana with ease. No disrespect to Indiana. Sabonis is one of the most underrated players in this league. But there's something about Washington.
And I'm also picking Washington as well. Washington's off to a hot start. But the one thing that I want to mention here, Indiana is one of the worst home teams in basketball right now. They're 13-22 at the Fieldhouse. So that is the worst out of playoff teams. It ranks like the Detroit Pistons, who are dead last in the Eastern Conference, have the same home record as them. So I think they would rather be playing this game on the road. It's still possible, as we've said. We're bringing this to you at before games on Saturday. Washington still could move up into ninth place, but if it's the way it is right now, I don't think it really matters either. I think Washington, just in terms of the backcourt of Beal and Westbrook, and they've been on. Russell Westbrook's been on of late. Beal may not be off to the torrid start that he had at the beginning of the year. He's not an MVP candidate anymore, but he can still score the ball. I also like the way that their bigs have been playing. Davis Bertans and Robin Lopez have been playing well. It was a big blow earlier when Thomas Bryant went down, but they filled in nicely, especially of recent. Rui Hachimura looks really good right now. I think that Washington's an interesting team. I think that their starting lineup beats out Indiana, despite Indiana having the best player on the floor in Domantas Sabonis. So that means both of us, with our bold takes, have Boston, Washington playing for that 8 seed right now. So who do you have?
For me, it was another easy pick, like tough emotionally because we're both Boston fans. But I have Washington over Boston simply because Jaylen Brown's out. Washington's hot. Westbrook's one of the best players in the league right now with the way he's been playing. And Beal's got some room to improve throughout these playoffs. And I think he can, and I think he will, especially against Boston.
I also have to agree. Boston on paper should win this matchup, but it's not on paper. There's no Jaylen Brown. All the pressure is on Jason Tatum right now, and there's no reliable number 2 in Boston. Washington has that. Whether it's Beal or Westbrook winning that night, they've always got a reliable number 2, and their bigs outmatch Boston again. Same thing with Charlotte. When it was Washington and Biyombo. With Washington, it's Bertans and Robin Lopez right now.
Yep.
I think that they outmatch them right now. I don't think Boston's in great form whatsoever. They're 3-7 in their last 10. So I have Washington scooping up that 8 seed. And
Charlotte 7. We're both
Charlotte
the same.
7. So now with that, we think that the top 6 is going to stay in the same order, but we'll reveal to you our updated brackets later on once the season is completed.
Yep.
And then we'll break them down next week a little bit more, any changes we have. So we will start then. Both of us have the Sixers and the Wizards as the 1-8 seed. I'll start it off here. As much as I may have hyped up Washington, they're not beating the Sixers. I think the miracle run ends there, and I think it ends in a very sound fashion. I have the Sixers with the clean sweep there. Joel Embiid is having a monster year. Ben Simmons is Ben Simmons. Great on both sides of the ball. Tobias Harris looks good this year. They've got that 3-point edge with Seth Curry. They look good. The Sixers are the top seed in the Eastern Conference right now for a reason. So I'm just gonna roll with it.
You guys said you wanted hot takes, right?
you're not doing it.
You know what? I think somebody's going to get injured in Philadelphia, and I'm taking Washington in 7. There's no reason. I know this is a dumb pick, but I'm going to do it anyways. I'm taking Washington in 7.
That is bold, and that would mean big changes for the Sixers if that happens. Wow.
The reason I think they're Washington's just hot going into this. I mean, Philadelphia's playing good basketball. Obviously, they're a fantastic team. But something about Philadelphia in the playoffs just doesn't sit well with me, and I think they're going to get shaken up.
So I'm definitely sticking with my routine pick there with the Sixers. But with that, we will move on to the 2-7 matchup.
Yep.
So this would be Brooklyn, and we both have the Hornets.
Yes.
So again, in a pretty unremarkable series, I think there'll be a little bit of magic. I think LaMelo Ball and company are good enough to take one game from Brooklyn here. But I have the Nets in 5. You can't really counter that big 3. There's not a whole lot of arguments to be made there. Durant, Harden, and Kyrie are just good. So
that's totally fair.
So yeah, I'll go with that.
You want more hot takes? No, I'm kidding. Not this time. I got Brooklyn with a 4-0 sweep. Just they're too strong of a team. And unless something detrimental happens, I don't think they'll have any problems with Charlotte.
And they're coming in healthy too. All 3 of them are coming back healthy. The Nets are looking healthy at the right time.
And that's another thing that bodes well for Philadelphia. Is that this is one playoff run where they will be healthy.
Yep. Just didn't bode well enough for you to pick them. So let's move on to the 3-6 matchup, which would be the Bucks and probably the biggest surprise in the Eastern Conference, the New York Knicks.
Magical season. Back
playing playoff basketball. So this one I think will be a tight series because there's not a lot of teams, if any, that are better than the New York Knicks defensively. And I think the Knicks can wear out the Bucks for some games there. But at the end of the day, I'm going to take Giannis Antetokounmpo and the crew, and I'm going to go with the Bucks. But the Bucks in 7 games, I think the Knicks really take them the distance in that one.
Yeah, Derrick Rose has been fantastic. He's been a great addition for him on top of Julius Randle, and he probably won't win MVP, but he had a great season. Nothing to look down on. And I agree, 7 games. New York's going to push them. They're a very sound team.
Yep.
And
so with that, we've got our last matchup then in the first round. We've got the Hawks and the Heat. This is an interesting matchup. So the Hawks in this case, we're predicting will finish with home court advantage, but I don't think it's going to matter. The Heat are 8-2 coming into this. The Heat are gelling at the right time there. I think the Heat take this. I think the Hawks are good enough to take a couple games from them, just because the Heat offensively have been a little lackluster this year.
Yeah.
Besides the Knicks, they have the lowest points per game as a team this year. So I'm going to go with the Heat, but I'm going to go with the Heat in 6 games.
Same thing. I have the Heat in 6 games. I don't think there's much of a debate here. I don't think Atlanta's game's going to translate well in the playoffs. I think they're prone to getting shut down. And Miami's a team that can do that. So
now moving on to round 2 in the East, we'll start with what should be, the Sixers at number 1. It's not the case for both of us here. So I have the Sixers would then be playing the Heat. I don't think there's a whole lot necessarily to debate here. I think I'm going to go with the Sixers over the Heat here. I think the Sixers offensively are just better. I think the center matchup will probably be the highlight with Embiid playing Adebayo. I think Embiid outmatches him. I think Philadelphia may not shoot the 3 as well as Miami with Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler can pull up. But I'm going to say the Sixers win this one in 6 games and head on to the Eastern Conference Finals. We don't have the same matchup. You have the Wizards playing the Heat. Tell me, who do you have winning with the Wizards and the Heat?
So yes, we do have different matchups. I took Washington just because injuries may happen, and I don't feel right about Philadelphia going far. I mean, they very well could, and if they do, yeah, sure, they can beat Miami. But when it comes to Miami versus Washington, I think Miami's going to take that easily just because they have the experience and they're a good deep team. They're a young team that have players that can surprise you. So I have Miami in 5.
Miami in 5. So I have the Sixers, you have Miami. Let's move to the 2-3 matchup here, the Nets and the Bucks. Both of us had this matchup here.
Yes.
this is going to be a tough matchup here. You've got Giannis playing against the big three, but I think the big three prevail. Even though Milwaukee may be the better offensive team on paper in terms of what they've done this year, when you have a fully healthy Brooklyn Nets team, that is very hard to shut down defensively. I have the Bucks taking a couple games, but I have the Nets at 6.
Yep, that's exactly what I have. I think Milwaukee is a good enough team to steal some games from this super team. This team should go down as one of the greatest ever assembled, and they should be able to get through Milwaukee pretty easily. But again, I think Milwaukee's that good. They can steal some games.
So that brings us to our Eastern Conference Finals. I have the Sixers and the Nets. You have the Heat and the Nets. I have the Nets beating the Sixers in 6 games. Similar arguments there. The one thing, though, that the Sixers, if they are to win this series, have to exploit is that center matchup. Joel Embiid versus either DeAndre Jordan or Nick Claxton. Brooklyn is not big on centers, but I think every other area, they match up better against the Sixers in terms of three-point shooting, and then in terms of just star power. I think the big three doesn't really have an issue with Philadelphia here, so I have the Nets in 6. Now, who do you have? Because you have the Heat and the Nets.
Yeah, Heat and Brooklyn. Again, all these takes. The only one where injuries played a factor for me was Philadelphia, but everything else, I assume they're all going to be healthy throughout. And because of that, a healthy Brooklyn's going to handle any team in the East. And that's why I'm able to make the predictions I've made boldly, because no matter what happens, if Brooklyn doesn't come out of the East, it's a shame. I have Brooklyn in 5. Miami can steal a game because of that experience, because of that heart, and because Jimmy Butler can take it up to the next level.
So we both have Brooklyn. You have them beating the Heat in 5. I have them beating the Sixers in 6. So it may have been a little bit of a different route. You had some bolder takes, but we ended up at the same outcome in the East. So now we'll move to the West, where things get a little more uncertain here. The Dallas Mavericks have clinched a spot have clinched a playoff spot now, so they will be safe from the play-in. So that means it's between Portland and the Lakers. So who do you have going into the play-in tournament? And then we will go to our play-in predictions.
So I kept it as is. As of 12:30, I kept my entire bracket as the standings are. So I have the Lakers 7, Golden State 8, and then I believe Memphis is 9 and San Antonio's 10.
San Antonio 10.
Yeah. So that's what I have for the play-in. What about you? I know you had a take there.
I switched it up because Portland, they just lost to Phoenix, and now they have to play Denver.
Yeah.
Denver is not going to be resting guys because they want to make sure that they Denver's not. Well, it'd be tough to see. It'll be interesting to see if Denver's resting guys. I don't think they will. I think Portland has that tougher matchup as opposed to the Lakers schedule with the Pacers and then the Pelicans. So I have the Lakers doing everything they can not to play Steph Curry and the Warriors in the play-in. So I actually have the Lakers finishing 6th.
Okay.
And then I have Portland finishing 7th going to that play-in. So I have then Portland, Golden State. I have Portland over Golden State. I think that even though Portland may finish as the 7th seed, they will confirm that they are the 7th seed. They will not drop any further. I have them beating the Warriors. I just think they match up against them better, especially in terms of the bigs with Nurkic against Wiseman. Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum are a better backcourt. It'll be a tough matchup. It'll be an exciting game because the Warriors shouldn't be your typical play-in team because they do have a potential MVP candidate in Steph Curry. And they are, recent 3-time champions. So it's really tough to say, but I'm going to go with Portland in a very good game. Lots of deep threes coming from Lillard and Curry that game. Watch for that.
Yes, sir.
So then the 9-10 matchup, who will the Warriors be matching up against between Memphis and San Antonio?
I love DeMar DeRozan, but I have to go with Memphis. I think they have a little bit more to the game, a little bit more that they can rely on. And John Morant, I think, can do some damage. So I have Memphis over San Antonio.
Because as it stands right now, it's not settled between Memphis and Golden State. Memphis could jump up into the 8th spot, but we have them finishing in the 9th spot. Everything's staying put. And because Memphis is, they've had just as good of a season as Golden State, that's my big reasoning behind picking them over San Antonio. San Antonio had, a great start to the season. They've struggled since. They're coming into the playoffs at 2-8. Again, I love DeMar DeRozan as well. I think that guy's a workhorse. He's got that playoff experience, but I'm going to side with John Morant. I also think that Jonas Valanciunas is having a wildly underrated season
Oh,
at center, and he
100%.
needs to be shown some love there. Jaren Jackson's coming back healthy, and they still have Brandon Clark. They still have Dylan Brooks. They have one of the most interesting starting lineups in basketball. You can't sleep on the Grizzlies, so I'm going to go with Memphis over San Antonio. So with that, both of us have Memphis and Golden State. Memphis will be heading to San Francisco to play the Warriors if our predictions are right. So who do you have between the Warriors and the Grizzlies?
I still believe Memphis can do some serious damage, but I don't know if it's enough to take out Steph Curry. I think that guy's just an absolute animal, and I don't see him being stopped by Memphis. So I'm going to go with Golden State.
I also agree. As much as I like Memphis, the Steph Curry and Draymond Green dynamic will play out well there. If Kelly Oubre is back and healthy, that also helps out as he's found his footing. It'll depend on how rusty he is, because sometimes he's prone to inconsistency. Andrew Wiggins has looked good this year. Guys like big shout out to the Canadian on that team, Mike Mulder. Mulder's been fantastic off the bench and filling in that starting role while Oubre's been gone. So definitely the Warriors are a deeper team than they look on paper. So I'm going with the Warriors over Memphis, and that's no disrespect to Memphis. It's just they're in a really tough conference.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised if Memphis nails that 8 seed. It would not shock me.
Yeah, they definitely can.
But I'm going to go with the experience that the Warriors have, and I'm going to go with them to take the 8th seed. So both of us have that, and which means both of us have the matchup: Utah and Golden State in the first round. Utah being the 1, Golden State being the 8 seed. So who do you have between the Jazz and the Warriors?
I have Utah's depth over Steph Curry here, and the Warriors, I have them winning that in 5. I don't know if that needs much explanation. I think Utah's earned their spot.
Yeah, Utah's earned their spot, 50-game winner. I have Steph Curry taking one more game from Utah than you have.
They definitely can.
Yeah, I think Steph's good enough to do that, but it'll definitely be, it's not your typical 1-8 matchup like I have with the Sixers and Wizards, where it'd be a clean sweep. But I have Utah beating the Warriors in 6 games. So this is where things start to switch up here.
Yeah.
You have the Lakers at 7, playing the Suns at 2. I have the Blazers at 7, playing the Suns at 2. So you start between the Lakers and the Suns. Who do you have?
For the record, if it was Portland, I think they would win over Phoenix. Mm-hmm. But with the Lakers, I especially think they're going to win over Phoenix. That's no disrespect to Phoenix. What they've accomplished this year, it's been fantastic. Chris Paul in the MVP race, Devin Booker, they all have had a season to be proud of. But I think the Lakers are just that good with Anthony Davis and LeBron. If injuries come into play, then obviously Phoenix should take it. But I'm going to stick with Lakers in 5.
Lakers in 5. Now, you said if the Blazers were to play the Suns, that the Blazers would win, and you really just have the Suns losing in the first round. I do not have that. I have the Suns beating the Blazers in 7 games. I think the Suns are capable of beating the Lakers as well. If they have to play each other. I think the Lakers don't want
they
that
most
matchup.
certainly are. Yeah, they most certainly are.
The Suns have been just a phenomenal team, complete team. Chris Paul's led them to a miraculous finish, finally getting back to the playoffs for the first time since 2010. So yeah, I have the Suns in 7 games though. I don't think Dame Lillard's going to go quietly. I think Dame has shown time and time again that he is a playoff performer.
And he can beat teams better than him.
Whether it's against that Houston series, whether it was in that Houston series where he nailed the game-winning 3, whether it was in that Oklahoma City series where he made the game-winning 3 right in Paul George's eye.
And they extended that Golden State series,
the
conference finals. That shouldn't have gone as far as it did.
Nope, it should not have, but it did. I think Portland's capable of stuff, but I just think Phoenix is just having that magical year. So I'm going to go with Phoenix at 7.
Yeah.
So now we move to the 3-6 matchup. So it's a little different here because I have the Lakers surviving and avoiding the play-in. So I have Denver and LA. You have Portland staying put at 6. So you have Denver, Portland. So between the Nuggets and the Blazers, who do you have?
So this is a small hot take, I guess, but I have Portland in 6 because Dame is that good, and I think Denver's going to miss Jamal Murray and his playmaking. I think the load on Jokic may be too much for him to handle Portland. Not to say they don't have other guys they can turn to in Gordon, Porter Jr. But I think it's going to be Portland.
Yeah, I agree. And if Denver does end up playing Portland, I would also pick Portland probably in 6 games. However, I have the Lakers and Denver, and I think different team, same outcome in this case. I have Denver pushing it to 7 games. I think Nikola Jokic is capable of that, and I'm not predicting the Lakers to be the Lakers big two and AD and LeBron to be at 100%. To be honest, I think they only need to be at like 85% to really make a finals push.
Yeah.
But I don't see them being at 100%, and I think that the Lakers' lack of depth. Dennis Schroeder's been out for a while on the COVID list, and I just don't think that they have that great of depth. Kyle Kuzma's been inconsistent, so I see it getting pushed to 7 games. But it's pretty hard to pick against AD and LeBron. So I have the Lakers winning that series in 7. So that would be, I guess, my first real upset, other than maybe the 5 Heat beating the 4 Hawks.
Yeah.
So then that takes us to our 4-5 matchup in the West, a rematch of the 2-7 matchup last year where Luka Doncic hit that storied shot in the bubble. We got the Clippers and the Mavericks. Clippers at 4, Mavs at 5. Who do you have?
This is a tough choice. I originally had Dallas going to the conference finals, but I realize now that this is just going to be too much on Luka's shoulders for him to carry this team. And with Paul George playing the way he is, the Clippers should have a better playoff this year than they did last year. Yes, they did lose Trez, but I think they'll bounce back and do some damage. I have them winning in 7 with Luka and his squad respectively stealing some games.
I have the exact same pick. Clippers in 7. I like the Clippers bench. I think they've got, even trading Lou Williams away, Rajon Rondo's been great. Definitely a nice compliment to Patrick Beverley in the backcourt.
Yeah.
And then, Kawhi and Paul George. I don't see the playoff struggles coming up in this series against Dallas, although I do see Dallas taking some games. And that's just because Luka looks good. Kristaps looks good right now. So I'm going to go with the Clippers in 7. So we both have that. And that takes us to our Western Conference second round. So both of us had the Jazz moving on.
To play the Clippers.
To play the Clippers at 4. So Jazz Clippers, who do you have?
For this, I have to say the Clippers. I think they're in sync. I think they're playing good basketball, cohesive basketball, which they didn't have last year. And I think that's what hurt them, is they were a talented team, but they didn't work well together. And I think bringing in Rajon Rondo and making moves in that direction has helped them a lot. And I think that'll help them beat Utah.
Now you see, I have the opposite. I have the Jazz prevailing over the Clippers.
Okay.
And I have that going 7 games. The Clippers deserve that respect there. But the Jazz are gelling right now with that combo of Mitchell and Rudy Gobert.
I think the lack of versatility in Gobert's game is going to be exposed in this playoffs.
But I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say it in this matchup, just because the Clippers don't really counter with that rival big.
Yeah, fair. But I still think they can. I'm not saying like they're going to put a big on a big, but I think when they go in the paint, or even when they're shooting from the perimeter, it's going to show that he's a little limited in his defensive range.
I wouldn't say that. I still think Rudy Gobert, maybe next to Joel Embiid, is the best defensive center in the league. He wins Defensive Player of the Year after Defensive Player of the Year all the time. So I think that matches up well against Ivica Zubac, and that's been one of the Clippers', I guess, secret weapons in a way. It's just been the way that that Zubac has played throughout especially throughout of recent. So I also think the Jazz are coming into this real hot too, or at least they're coming into the playoffs at 7-3. I think that they efficiently with some challenges get through Steph Curry and the Warriors. So I think that in terms of that extra game of rest will come up big here. It'll be a close series, but I'm going to go with the Jazz on that one. They're the best team in the NBA for a reason. I'm just going to put some respect on the names of Mitchell and Gobert. So
Mitchell's dope, but I think Gobert may be a smidge overrated. But that's just my opinion. Let's move.
Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. So I have Portland and LA, and you have LA and Phoenix.
Yes.
So you go ahead.
So
LA and Phoenix.
This is the matchup that I think I'm the most excited to see out of the playoffs. I think the Suns are in this matchup would probably be wildly underrated because they're not the Lakers. They're not the reigning champions. They don't have LeBron. They don't have Anthony Davis. But one thing that the Suns have that the Lakers don't is an identity. The Suns know what they are. The Suns know what they're about. They know what their playing style is, and they're comfortable with that. Chris Paul knows where everyone is on the floor. Chris Paul knows everyone's game. He's the ultimate floor general in that case. They've got great wing play with Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and this isn't even to mention they still have Devin Booker sitting right there as well.
Yep.
Complementing the backcourt with Chris Paul, a great find for Chris Paul for assists, and then DeAndre Ayton just matches up better than DeAndre Ayton is just bigger than Montrezl Harrell, and he's just all around better than an aging Marc Gasol right now. He's better than Andre Drummond right now with the Lakers.
Yeah.
If you put Andre Drummond with the Cavaliers against Ayton, I'd take Andre Drummond there. But Ayton's a little more mobile. He's a little bit quicker. He's got some more dominant moves in the paint. I think Phoenix, maybe minus the power forward and small forward matchup there with LeBron and AD, I think Phoenix outmatches this Suns team, or Phoenix outmatches this Lakers team. Sorry, and I think Phoenix takes it. I think the Lakers run ends here. I have Phoenix taking it in 7 games. It'll be a tight series, similar to those Suns series we were used to seeing when they played San Antonio in the Steve Nash era. This might become a rivalry for years to come. But I like the Suns to prevail over the Lakers.
Okay, no, that's a solid pick. I obviously disagreed. I had Lakers beating Phoenix in the first round, but for this round, I have LA and Portland. Portland's a great team, great depth. They've definitely made the improvements needed to have a deep playoff run. But LeBron and AD, I don't think can be stopped, and at least not by Portland. No disrespect to Dame and the rest of the boys, but I have the Lakers winning in 6.
Okay. And it's one of those things where it's really hard to pick against LeBron or Anthony Davis, especially after what they did last year in the bubble and what LeBron has done year after year after year in the finals. He's considered the greatest of all time for a reason. So. But I think the Suns can outlast them. So now to move on to the Western Conference Finals, you have the Clippers and the Lakers. I have the Jazz and the Suns. So in your case, in the Battle of LA, to meet the Nets in the NBA Finals, who do you have coming out on top?
I have LA in 6, but which one?
Which one?
I think it's going to be a pretty even series. You always like to see LeBron and Kawhi. We missed that last year. Mm-hmm. I think the Lakers got it in 6. Because the LeBron factor and the AD factor.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's tough to, if that's the matchup, it's tough to pick against them.
Yep.
So yeah, there's not a whole lot of debate in that case, especially when you're dealing with arguably the greatest player of all time in LeBron. But in my case, I don't have either of those teams there. I have the Jazz and the Suns. Whether I'm right or not, that'll remain to be seen. But with the Jazz and the Suns, again, I'm going to roll with the Suns' identity there. They have, I think, the best identity in the Western Conference right now. And I'm going to roll with the Suns to do what Steve Nash could never do, and that's take them to the NBA Finals, take them to the NBA Finals. First time since Charles Barkley, since the Charles Barkley era Suns. Yeah, I have them winning there. It'll be a good matchup, exciting matchup. 2 teams I love watching play in Utah and Phoenix. But yeah, Suns in 6.
That's a good take for sure. But now we have our finals matchup. It's Brooklyn for the East. I have the Lakers and you have the Suns. Let's go with you first. Who do you think is going to take it?
So Brooklyn and Phoenix. I think the identity train ends here. I think Phoenix is outmatched in terms of star power. You have 3 of arguably the best players in the NBA playing on Brooklyn. They're the 3 best players on the floor. I think regardless of who they play, I don't think Brooklyn has very much competition right now. If they're a completely healthy team, I have Brooklyn winning this finals in 5. I have them doing it pretty efficiently, similar to what the Warriors were doing when they swept Cleveland to get their last finals. I don't see much of a competition for anyone against Brooklyn. So I'm going with Brooklyn in 5 over the Suns. No disrespect to the Suns, but they don't have Durant, Harden, or Kyrie. So
yep, that's fair.
And now who do you have? Because you have the Nets and the Lakers.
So you had Brooklyn over Phoenix, which is totally reasonable. But LA does have a player that's better than all 3 in LeBron, and AD is a force to be reckoned with. I don't think we've seen the best of him in LA. And assuming this team's healthy, I think they have a legitimate shot to beat Brooklyn. I think it'll take them 7 games. But these are 2 Hall of Fame players, and I think they'll get the job done.
You had the Lakers in 7 over the Nets. I had the Nets in 5 over the Suns. So just like our Stanley Cup playoff predictions, there were some discrepancies there. But that's why we do this. That's why they play the games. And that's why we have our show so that we can debate all these takes. We can bring you all these takes, and we can bring you those daily updates that you guys want. So that's our episode today. Thanks for watching. Give this video a like, subscribe down below so you don't miss our weekly Sunday episode drops, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's it for us. Thanks for watching again, and see you next week. Peace.